What is going on, guys? I am Paul Ryan, your host of the ATB Fantasy Show. If you're new to the show, thank you for joining us. And to our regular listeners, welcome back. With me, as always, is my co-host, the best co-host in the world, Dave Pigskin Papers Hartman. Dave, how are you?
I'm doing great, Paul. There's a game going on right now, so I appreciate anyone who's tuning in and has the game on in the background. I know the Lions are out to a 17-3 lead, and I'll check out the end of that game after we're done here. How are you doing tonight?
I can't complain, my friend. I had some barbecue for dinner. I'm feeling full. I'm feeling satisfied. Good barbecue always puts me in a good mood, Dave.
Excellent. You Texas guys with your barbecue.
Yeah, is barbecue, is that a big thing in New York or?
Well, yeah, I mean there are plenty of places you can get it. You know, the interesting thing is there's about 5 different kinds of barbecue, right? There's Memphis, Kansas City, St. Louis, Texas, Carolina, and there's no New York style specifically. So if you go to get barbecue up here, and there's plenty of places to get it, usually it'll be kind of like St. Louis style, but you can get pretty much everything. So yeah, we got plenty of places up here to get ribs and brisket and stuff like that. Not like Texas, though.
You know, I won't lie, Dave. I'll trade my barbecue for either pizza or the Asian cuisine that you guys get.
There you go. Yeah, we got it all up here. What we don't have up here is good football teams right now.
Hey, man. You know, we're going to talk about it a little bit later, but yeah, I'm starting to look at my team the same way. I know maybe that's a bit of some recency bias. But yeah, I feel your pain, my friend.
Yeah. So Paul, remind everyone where they can find you on Twitter and get at your content.
Yes, guys, I'm Paul Ryan. You can find me on Twitter at Paul_Ryan15. Dave, what about you?
I am at Pigskin Papers. I just posted today on my website, which is thepigskinpapers.com, my week 4 preview, which has starts and sits and sleepers and matchups to avoid and exploit and things like that. But I also post all my content on Twitter. So this week we're going to start with something a little different. We'll try to do this each week maybe, which will be our teams segment. So for those listeners who aren't aware, Paul is a Cowboys fan. I'm a Miami Dolphins fan. And so, you know, we'll start with the Cowboys, Paul. You know, they were big favorites this week going into Arizona to face a team that I think had been a lot feistier than people thought. You know, I think people before the season started looked at the Cardinals and said, you know, that's as likely as any team to be in the Caleb Williams sweepstakes and only win a couple of games. But they took it to the Cowboys. I know the Cowboys had a bunch of offensive line injuries and lost Trayvon Diggs during the week, which was unfortunate. Those practice injuries are always the worst. But what happened to the Cowboys? I didn't see much of the game. What happened to them in the desert?
You know, you kind of touched on it there, Dave. You can blame it on missing 3 of our starting offensive linemen. You can blame it on the loss of Trayvon Diggs. But to be honest, we just got outcoached, outplayed, period. I mean, we got hit in the mouth early, and we just never recovered.
Yeah, it's interesting because when the Giants went in there the week before, the Cardinals got out to a big lead, shut the Giants out in the first half. I think it was like 20-0 or something like that. And the Giants were able to regroup and, you know, sort of have a ferocious rally. I think Josh Dobbs has been a little better than people thought he was going to be.
Indeed, yeah.
You know, but I sort of expected the Cowboys to just eventually wake up and rally in that game, you know, kind of like what Green Bay did last week against New Orleans. And I sort of, you know, the 2 games that were like that were that game and the Jaguars and the Texans. And I was sort of waiting for the Jaguars also. But like the Cowboys, they just kind of never were able to mount much of a comeback in the second half. I think if the Cowboys had made that game close, they would have probably won the game. But they weren't able to kind of get that one score to get within one score and put pressure on Arizona.
Yeah, unfortunately not, Dave. It was tough to watch just because you see how our defense performed and our defense just kind of fell flat this week. It was a bit surprising.
Yeah, they gave up a lot of rushing yards.
Exactly. Yeah. Well, Dave, your team did a little bit better than mine. For those who don't know, Dave is a Dolphins fan, and Dolphins, you had no shortage of points there. Dave, how did Miami score 70 points in an NFL game?
I watched a decent amount of the game, and it was all, you would think if you score 70 points, you'd have like 6 turnovers or maybe, some return touchdowns, but they scored 10 offensive touchdowns. They did have a couple turnovers that they got that gave them short fields, but for the most part, it was just big plays. I think Denver just kind of gave up. The Dolphins have a decent advantage at home in September, 1:00 games. They're used to the heat and the humidity. Sometimes teams that come in struggle a little with that, and especially teams coming from the West Coast or Mountain Time playing a 1:00 game. I mean, Denver was just never in that game, and they couldn't. I mean, I know the Dolphins have fast guys, but guys were just running free and like going untouched, 68 yards for touchdowns. It was crazy. It was like, I think they averaged 10 yards per play. And they could have scored more. I mean, they had those 70 points by the 5-minute mark of the fourth quarter. And then they didn't score again. I mean, they took Tua out. Mike White comes in and throws a 70-yard touchdown pass to Chosen Anderson. It was just crazy. It didn't seem to matter who they had on the field. You'd love to bank those points because you can't take them with you. And Miami has a huge game this week at the Bills, a team that also blew someone out this past week. So I'd love to take some of those points with me, but that's not the way it works.
I heard a crazy stat that correct me if I'm wrong, but I heard that Denver had something like 25 missed tackles in that game against Miami.
It wouldn't surprise me. They really, it was as bad a defensive showing as you're going to see. I mean, guys either were running open or Denver was missing tackles. It was pretty nuts. So sticking with looking back at week 3, we'll do our weekly performance of the week. So Paul, looking at both the AFC and the NFC, who or what player from each conference is your performer of the week?
Yes, I'll start us off with the AFC, David. Man, I got to go with C.J. Stroud. On the road facing a division opponent and winning by 20 points, Stroud had over 250 passing yards, 2 touchdowns, and no turnovers. Hell of a game by the rookie there, Dave.
Yeah, absolutely. Who's your NFC? And interesting with Stroud, I saw this stat after the game. Since the merger, he's only the third quarterback to have 900 yards in his first 3 starts. It's Cam Newton, Justin Herbert, and him. So he's in very good company, and he has yet to throw an interception, which is impressive. I think the Texans are feeling a lot better about winning that game at the end of last season that gave them the second pick instead of the first pick, because they got their guy, and he looks like it's only 3 games, but he looks like the right guy. Who's your NFC player?
It pains me to say this one day, but I have to go with Josh Dobbs. Dobbs and the Cardinals had no business winning that game against the Cowboys, but then to not only win the game, but then win the game by double digits. Dobbs only had 4 completions. He ran for over 50 rushing yards and made some big-time momentum-swinging throws. For a guy making his 3rd career start, Dobbs looked pretty good, man.
That's a good choice. So my guys for this week, a little weird because I'm going to go with a kicker and a defensive end. But my AFC player of the week is Matt Gay. First he was 5 for 5 on field goals. He is the first player in NFL history to hit 4 from 50 yards and beyond in a single game, and that included the game winner. If you told me a kicker was going to decide a Ravens game, I would just assume it's Justin Tucker hitting like a 65-yarder or
Yeah,
something in overtime. But no,
right.
it was Matt Gay. Tremendous performance by him. And my NFC Player of the Week for last week is Aiden Hutchinson. He
Mm.
kind of did everything, and they really shut down the Falcons completely. He had 2 sacks, a forced fumble, a fumble recovery, 2 passes defended, and was just kind of making plays all over the field. He already, the very beginning of the game tonight, he got a sack on Green Bay's first possession. So he's another guy who was picked number 2 overall, who looks like the right guy over the guy who went first, playing the same position as him a year ago. So those are my players of the week this week.
Hey, I like those picks, Dave. Going special teams and going defense. That's interesting.
Little different. We talk about offense so much, especially when we get into fantasy
Yeah.
football, but defense and special teams can matter too.
Absolutely, no doubt. Well, Dave, let's go to the opposite end here. Let's talk about our week 3 duds of the week. Give us your AFC guy.
So my AFC guy, and I think he was probably not 100% with a bad toe, but it's Derrick Henry. And it really wasn't. It wasn't all his fault, because he had 11 carries, and I think he was hit behind the line on something like 8 or 9 of them. That Cleveland defense is no joke, and we'll talk about them a little more as the show goes on. But it was the fewest yards that Derrick Henry has had since he became the starting running back for the Titans. It was his worst game, 11 carries, 20 yards. So he's my AFC dud of the week. And my NFC dud of the week, I think, is the same player I said last week, so I feel bad about that. But I got to go with Justin Fields. 99 passing yards just doesn't get it done in the NFL. You knew they were going to lose to Kansas City, but I figured that there would be some garbage time. He'd put up at least some stats, get some, confidence throws in late in the game, but he really, was not particularly good throughout the game. Like I said, only threw for 99 yards. The Bears just had an abysmal week with everything that happened to that team last week at their facility and with their coach and all of that stuff. I think that's probably the most upset fan base right now. But I think for the second week in a row, I'm giving this to Justin Fields. Who are your AFC and NFC duds of the week for week 3, Paul?
So it's unlikely that you started my AFC guy for any reason other than just pure desperation. But Zach Wilson, I mean, come on the game-deciding play, he didn't even give his team a chance to win or do anything for that matter with that throw that didn't go beyond the sticks. I mean, that was pathetic, Dave.
Yeah, I had him written down too, and then I just thought he's too, he doesn't even count as an NFL player anymore. So
he really doesn't, man. It's crazy.
That's a better one than Derrick Henry, because I think Derrick Henry, like I said, I think he was a little banged up, and I think it was just a case of the defense they played. You're right about Zach Wilson. That was a pretty awful performance. There's all kinds of metrics on him. He's got the worst numbers for like clean pocket throws, like throws where he's not pressured. He's got the worst accuracy and the lowest completion percentage. So even when, he might just be one of those quarterbacks that hears footsteps even when they're not there. And sees posts like Mark Sanchez, or was that Sam Darnold? That was Sam Darnold.
Sam Darnold, yes, sir.
Who's your NFC dud of the week?
Yes, sir. I have to give it to Daniel Jones. It's crazy. In two of his 3 games this season, Jones has scored less than 5 fantasy points. On Thursday night, he had less than 150 total yards and was missing throws all night. Of course, one throw went viral, where he was trying to hit Darren Waller for what would have been a first down, just at least a foot above his head. Giants offenses, I don't know what's going on with them this year, man, but Daniel Jones is a big part of why they're not looking too good.
Yeah, I agree with that. I mean, the one The one thing I'll say is they played the Cowboys week 1 and they played the 49ers week 3, and those might be probably 2 of the 3 best defenses in the NFL. But that excuse only goes so far. In the first half, they were shut out in the first half against Arizona also. They came to life in the second half. But outside of that second half, they've had 5 very bad halves of offensive football, and the only team they've outscored this year is the Jets. The Jets have scored 42. The Giants have scored 43. And for New York football fans, it feels like 2020 and 2021 when those were the 2 worst offenses in the NFL. There's still a lot of season left, but those are 2 teams that definitely are struggling to move the ball and to put points on the board.
Absolutely,
Let's stop talking about duds because it's depressing. Talk about something a little more uplifting, and that's the biggest surprise of week 3. So, Paul, what player or team stood out to you and surprised you the most this past week?
I'm going to stick with the Texans again, Dave, just to beat a Jaguars team that has more talent across the board than the Texans have. And again, to win on the road by 20 with a rookie quarterback and first-time head coach, that says a lot about that team's mentality and their makeup and just, what they've kind of maybe not going on in the locker room and, what it says about their coaching staff.
That's a good one. They were my answer too. So since you said them, I'll go with the Arizona Cardinals. All they heard all week is why they couldn't win that game and how they blew a huge lead to the Giants the week before. And they punched the Cowboys in the mouth like we talked about. Josh Dobbs had a great game. James Conner had a great game. Their defense played well. Now they get the 49ers this week, and they'll hear the same thing all week. I don't think the same thing will happen, but they're my biggest outside of the Texans. They were my biggest surprise of the week, and I think both the Texans and the Cardinals destroyed a lot of 3-team teasers that people did, because they were both big underdogs that won outright.
Yeah. All right, Dave. We like to talk stats on the show. What is your favorite stat from week 3?
So we'll talk. I won't give any from the Miami-Denver game. We'll give that a special category because there were so many crazy stats from that game. But I'll give you 2. The Browns in 3 games now this year. The Browns only gave up to the Titans 6 first downs and 94 yards. That's just like you don't see that in the NFL. Or you rarely see that. And that's 3 straight games where nobody's gotten 10 first downs on them. They've only allowed 21 first downs across 3 games. So that's my stat of the week, kind of, or of the season so far. And then just a weird one with the 49ers. So the 49ers have played 3 games. And in each of their 3 games, they've got 3 touchdowns, 3 extra points, and 3 field goals for 30 points. They've done that 3 weeks in a row, which is kind of weird.
That is.
Almost
like scoregami.
You're getting 30 points. Yeah. What was your stat of the week for week 3?
This is a little teaser to our next talking point, Dave. But man, the Miami Dolphins with 1,651 total yards have the most yards through 3 games all time in the NFL.
I did not know that. But that's pretty amazing. It'd be a tough test this week in Buffalo. I don't know how much they'll add to that total. So speaking of the Dolphins, there were a lot of crazy stats in that Miami-Denver game. What was your favorite stat just from that game?
This is probably a pretty basic one, Dave, but I'll never forget my reaction when I looked at my phone, looking on the sleeper app to look at the scores and everything, looking at my team scores, and seeing the Dolphins score 70 points. When I saw 70-20, I'm like, there's no way this is real. Of course it was.
Yeah.
But the fact that the Dolphins are only the 4th team in NFL history to score 70 points, I mean, the fact that three other teams have done it, but man, just to score 70 points is absolutely insane.
Well, and the last time it happened was 1966. You weren't born, and I was only 2. So, my favorite stat from this game is from a fantasy perspective. So, Raheem Mostert had 142 total yards and 4 touchdowns, and he was not the highest scoring running back on the Dolphins in fantasy points. He was second to Devon. I believe he's told everyone his last name is pronounced Achane, not
yes.
Who also had 4 touchdowns, but had more yards and more receptions. So that's just crazy that they had 2 running backs that combined for 8 touchdowns. And another fun fact I saw, that you know how they do that thing where they are able to chart the fastest ball carriers, like 21 miles an hour or whatever it is. The 5 fastest times recorded so far this season are all members of the Dolphins, and it's 3 different players. It's like 2 of them are Tyreek Hill, 2 of them are Devon Achane, and 1 of them is Raheem Mostert. But that's the other thing. They scored 70 points without Jalen Waddle. It's just kind of crazy. The whole thing is still hard to believe, and I hope that, like I said, I just hope they saved a little for this coming week.
Yes, sir. The fastest team in the NFL, the Miami Dolphins, and Jalen Waddle's pretty fast too. Don't get me wrong, Dave. So when they get him back, that'll be fun. You touched on this team earlier, but you talked about the Browns, and they held the Titans to 94 yards, and they haven't allowed 10 first downs in any games, like you mentioned. Is this the best defense in the NFL, and is it a stay away for fantasy purposes?
Yeah, I mean, I think there are 3 defenses that on any given week are probably the best in the NFL. I mean, with the Cowboys losing Trayvon Diggs, that's actually an important piece of their defense. But
yeah,
I'd still, on their best day, probably put them with the 49ers and the Browns. I mean, the Browns have been the best so far. And, I saw this the other day. They've allowed the fewest or second fewest fantasy points to quarterbacks, running backs, wide receivers, and tight ends. So they're kind of giving up. There was that one long touchdown to George Pickens in their second game. And besides that, they've really given up like nothing all season. So for me, they are becoming a stay away. And I'm nervous about, I'd be nervous starting Lamar Jackson against them this week. I mean, obviously, if you have Lamar, you're starting him, you probably don't have a better option. But that game's in Cleveland. And I don't know. I think they are becoming a bit of a stay away. I would not feel good starting any players against the Browns right now. How about you?
Dave, I want to see how they perform over the next 4 weeks before I declare them the best defense in the NFL. We know the Titans' offense is horrid, and their offensive line might be the worst in the NFL. Over the next 5 weeks, they play Baltimore, San Francisco, the Indianapolis Colts, and the Seattle Seahawks. I want to see how they do against better teams.
Yeah, that's fair. I mean, they did completely shut down the Bengals in week 1, but
yeah, that's true. That's true.
But they haven't had a good offensive game yet this year, so maybe that wasn't such a big feat. We'll have to see. So the Browns do have 1 loss. They lost that kind of crazy game to the Steelers in week 2. 3 weeks and there's only 3 undefeated teams left, and that's the Dolphins, the Eagles, and the 49ers, who, of course, those last 2 teams met in the NFC Championship game last year, so there's kind of no surprise maybe that those 2 teams are 3-0. Miami may be a little bit of a surprise. And then 4 teams don't have a win yet. You have the Broncos and the Bears, who are going to play each other this week, so someone's getting a win, unless they have one of those unlikely NFL ties. And then Carolina and Minnesota also don't have a win yet. So I don't know if you had a chance to look ahead at the schedules a little bit, but of the 3-0 teams, who do you think is the first one of them that's going to lose? And of the 0-3 teams, which one of them is the last one that's going to get a win?
Well, Dave, when I saw this question, I actually had to do some work for the pod and do some research. So I did look at the schedules, and the first team to lose, I think, will be Philly, and it will be week 7 when they face the Miami Dolphins. The first team to win will be Minnesota this week against the Carolina Panthers. How about you?
Well, I think Miami's going to be the first one to lose. I think they're going to lose in Buffalo this week. That's just a team that's had their number.
Yeah.
That's had their number in recent years. Tua has yet to have a really good game against the Bills. So I just think that's a tough spot for them coming off like the big high of that win over Denver.
Right.
So I think they'll and then I think, one of Chicago or Denver is going to win that game this week, but I think Carolina is going to be the last one to get a win. I think they're going to go the longest without a win. And I think, obviously whoever wins the Denver-Chicago game, which I think will be Denver, although it's hard to look at either Denver or Chicago with the way each of them played last week and say that team's about to win an NFL game. But because they're playing each other, someone has to. So, but usually it feels like there are like 4 or 5 teams after week 3 that haven't lost yet. This is a very low number.
Mm-hmm.
I think that the 72 Dolphins are in pretty good shape. I think having this few undefeated teams this early, and most of these teams, the Dolphins play the Eagles play the 49ers. So we're not going to have an undefeated team this year, I don't think.
I wouldn't think so, Dave. A team that could have made the category of biggest surprise performance could have been the Carolina Panthers, and we saw them, Andy Dalton of all people, giving them that offense a bit of a jolt in the arm. With Bryce Young missing some time with a ankle injury, would you say Bryce Young is better off sitting for a few more weeks and watching and learning, or should they throw him back in as soon as his ankle is okay?
He really didn't look ready. And especially in that Monday night game in week 2, the game looked a little big for him, I don't mean height wise. I'm not taking a swipe at his stature. The game looked a little fast for him. He looked a little overwhelmed by it. They really don't have a lot of good skill position players, and all their skill position players are new to the team, or most of them are. Like Miles Sanders, new to the team. Adam Thielen, new to the team. DJ Chark, Hayden Hurst. Other than Chuba Hubbard.
Yeah.
It's all new guys trying to gel together. I think it would be good, to let him sit. I don't even know how hurt he is. That might have been one of these where they were like, he's a little bit hurt. Let's just give him a little time off. I think I would play Dalton. They have a winnable game this week at home against the Vikings, who also don't have a win yet. So that's actually kind of interesting. I didn't realize that the winless teams are all playing each other this week. So
somebody's got to win, hopefully, right?
Both games, yeah, both of those games. So I think I would let Bryce Young sit and learn a little bit. Let that offense come together a little bit. The offensive line gel a little more, so he's not out there getting killed. Andy Dalton's he is what he is. He's a seasoned veteran who can make some throws and probably right now give them a better chance to win a game, and then bring Bryce Young along a little more slowly. Obviously, you want your number 1 overall pick rookie to get reps, and he'll get them, sooner or later. But I would give Dalton another game or 2 before bringing Bryce Young back. What would you do?
Yeah, I was going to say, you make some good points there, Dave. I definitely think it would benefit Bryce Young to sit and watch for sure. But in the NFL, nothing is better than live game reps, and Bryce definitely needs those. But if there's any questions about his ankle, if he's still feeling pain, then there's really no reason to rush him back. They're not really playing for anything this year. And he could still learn a lot just by watching Andy Dalton, because Andy Dalton is, as far as talent goes, is not the talent of Bryce Young, and we saw what he was able to do with that offense. So, sitting and watching and, maybe picking Dalton's brain could be beneficial to Young.
Yeah, I think that's right. It's interesting that the Bears have their own pick and they have Carolina's pick. They could end up with 2 top 5 picks in the next draft. By having those
Lord
2
knows
picks.
they need it.
Yeah. Well, Carolina needs it too, and they don't have their pick. So just getting back to something we talked about earlier, which is the travesty that is the Jets season without Aaron Rodgers, and with Zach Wilson under center. Here's another crazy stat: the Dolphins, the 726 yards that they had on Sunday, which was an NFL record for yards in a game, is more than the Jets have in 3 games, which is kind of crazy. Can the Jets keep going with Zach Wilson? Robert Saleh keeps saying, yeah, we're behind him, he's our guy. But, I got to think, you've seen some tirades on the sidelines from other players on that team. Like, how long can they keep trotting him out there and scoring 10 points? Should they be
after that,
make a trade or bringing someone in, or what do you think they should do?
No, just after that final play on Sunday, Zach Wilson belongs nowhere near an NFL football field, man. I thought maybe, having Aaron Rodgers as a mentor would benefit him, learning from Aaron Rodgers. I'm sure it could benefit him, but Aaron Rodgers isn't there. We're seeing now that he's just, I don't know what the Jets saw in him from college that thought he was worthy of taking him as high as they did. But, man, you talk about one of the bigger busts in the last at least 20 years, man. Zach Wilson's right up there.
Yeah, 100%. I just, it's they can't let too much of the season get away. I mean, if they're going to make a move, they brought in Trevor Siemian. Trevor Siemian isn't the answer, right? They brought him in for depth. Could they bring, if Zach is struggling this week, could they bring Siemian in? They could. I mean, he just got there, so I don't know how much he knows the offense and the playbook. But they're not making the playoffs with him either. So, there were people have suggested they should try to trade for Kirk Cousins. Cousins is a free agent after this season. If the Vikings lose a couple more games, maybe they give up on the season and, try to get something for Cousins if they're going to let him go at the end of the year anyway. But if they're going to do that in week 5 or 6, it's going to be too late, I think, in a pretty low AFC. And it's not like in football, it's not like other sports where you can just bring a guy in and let him play his position and, just plug him in. You can't do that with a quarterback so easily. There are some free agents that are available. The Jets don't really seem interested in Carson Wentz or Matt Ryan or Colin Kaepernick or whoever else might be out there. So unfortunately, they don't really have a plan B. And I don't think I'm with you. I just don't think we've seen it enough between last year and this year. I just don't think Wilson has it. So I think it's going to just be more ugly games for the Jets, at least for the foreseeable future.
It's unfortunate, man. They've got a good team too.
They do. They got a lot of good defensive players. They got, Garrett Wilson and Breece Hall. They should be better.
Yeah. Yes, sir. Well, let's take a peek into week 4 here.
I got a lot of Jets fans in my life. They are depressed people right now. Really are. And just the way, the fact that it only lasted 4 plays was just like the most Jets thing ever happened.
Seriously. I remember seeing a replay of it, and I was like, the way when I saw him react the way he did, I'm like, there's no way this is not serious.
Right. Right. He knew it. He knew it. The way he was sitting on the field. And the stadium just went like silent. It was one of those,
Yes.
the people didn't know what to. And then they won the game. That's the craziest thing. The craziest thing is that they won that
Yeah.
football with Zach Wilson. And, maybe you thought not that he did much to win the game, but they did win the game. That's the ultimate irony there.
It really is.
That
So
may
Dave,
end
let's
up
take a peek
being.
into week 4 here.
Go ahead, Paul. Sorry, I interrupted you.
No, you're fine. Go ahead.
No, I was just going to say at the end of this season, we might look back at like what was the craziest result of this season. And it might be that week 1 game with the Jets beating the Bills.
Seriously, yeah.
With Aaron Rodgers going out after 4 plays and Zach. I mean, and they won because Josh Allen turned the ball over like 4 times, or 3 times, whatever it was.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, that's why they won the game, but their defense made that happen also. It wasn't like, I think it was 4 because Whitehead had 3 picks and I think he also
had a fumble and 3 interceptions.
Yeah. So,
yeah.
I mean, but at the end of the season, when we look back, that might be the strangest result of the entire season. So I'm sorry, Paul, you were starting to move us into a week 4 discussion. I'm anxious to get into. So let's get to it.
Yeah. Let's take a peek here into week 4. I know it's already begun with the Lions and the Packers playing tonight. But when you look at the schedule, which game is your game of the week candidate?
Well, I think it's got to be a game we talked about already, which is Miami at Buffalo. The Bills have this division. The Patriots won the division 19 times in 20 years, and then the Bills have now won it, I think, either 3 or 4 years in a row, and it's their division. They're kind of still in this window, although they haven't gotten to a Super Bowl. They're in a Super Bowl window with the roster that they have. The Dolphins are kind of the upstart team in that division. 2-1 versus 3-0. I think the Bills are a 2.5 point favorite. Their defense is still very good. They kind of have it on both sides of the ball. Miami has it on one side of the ball. Their defense is still kind of a work in progress. So I think this is the game of the week. I'll go honorable mention another division game, Baltimore at Cleveland, and maybe the game tonight. What about you, Paul? What's your game of the week and what are you most looking forward to seeing?
Yeah, again, sticking with the hot hand, Dave, it's got to be Miami versus Buffalo. Those division games are always fun. They tend to have good. They have a good rivalry starting to build, and they've had good games in the past. So I'm excited for that one.
Yep. How about the opposite? What game are you least interested in, and is your dud of the week?
Man, that's Cincinnati versus Tennessee is going to be painful to watch. I'm sure that's what I think is going to be the dud of the week for me. How about you, Dave?
Yeah, that's a good one. I thought about that one, and I was thinking back to that playoff game they had 2 years ago where the Titans sacked Joe Burrow like 9 times and lost the game because Ryan Tannehill threw 3 interceptions. That is likely to be an ugly game. I agree.
For sure, yeah.
But my dud of the week is Arizona at San Francisco. I feel like Arizona just kind of played their Super Bowl. But they just played 2 really emotional games in a row. The Giant game where they blew a big lead and then beating the Cowboys. Now they got to go into San Francisco, and I think they're just going to get mopped up pretty badly, and that game will be one where we might see Sam Darnold. I don't know, though. I keep doubting these Cardinals, and they've been in every game. They could be 3-0, honestly. They lost
kind of crazy.
A very close game to the Commanders. They lost a very close game to the Giants, and they beat the Cowboys. So maybe they're a lot better than everyone thinks, and maybe this will be a competitive game, but I'm not expecting a competitive game. How about a sneaky shootout? Paul, what's your sneaky shootout game of the week?
Yeah, I say sneaky, but I don't know if maybe I should be working for one of the books in Vegas here, Dave. But with an over/under of 47.5, it sounds like Vegas thinks this will be a high-scoring game. I'm going to put my money on Seattle and the New York Giants on Monday night, my friend.
Yeah, I'm going to go. I think that could be a high-scoring game. I'm going to go Denver at Chicago.
That's a good one, man.
If you look at these teams last week, they gave up a combined 113 points, which is an astronomical number. Neither team has played any defense, or at least last week they didn't. And both teams do have some playmakers. I won't be surprised if Justin Fields and Russell Wilson put up some numbers this week. The running backs, the receivers. Right. So that's it's a game no one wants to watch. But that's my sneaky shootout of the week.
I like it. Okay, Dave, we like to talk upsets here. Which team has the biggest chance of pulling off an upset?
I'm going to go with the easiest thing to do here is to pick a team that's, where the point spread is kind of low. But I'm going to go with the Texans to pull off another one. They're at home getting 3 against the Steelers. The one thing I'm concerned about is T.J. Watt and that pass rush. T.J. Watt and Alex Highsmith. The Texans line is still not fully healthy. But C.J. Stroud has been, dealing with pressure and beating pressure. And I don't know that the Texans should be getting 3 points from the Steelers at home, based off how they played last week. So that's the upset I'm looking for. How about you, Paul?
I like that. You mentioned that this is your sneaky shootout, Dave, but I don't really like either of these teams, but I can see Chicago upsetting Sean Payton and the Broncos.
Yeah. Like we've been saying, someone's got to win that game.
Exactly.
Neither of those, it's hard to envision after last week either of those teams winning. But yeah, Sean Payton, I don't know what he's probably thinking right now. Maybe
he's thinking must win, man. He's got to win this.
Yeah, I think you're probably right. So let's just talk a little bit of fantasy as we start to wrap up the show here. Which highly ranked player is your fade of the week in fantasy for this week?
So I had to fade this guy, but I don't like the matchup for Kyren Williams this week. He's the RB7 on Fantasy Pros, but he's facing a Colts defense that's just allowed a little over 300 total yards to running backs and only 2 total touchdowns. I don't care for that matchup versus Kyren Williams, who was kind of brought back down to earth this past week against the not the 49ers, but forgive me for forgetting who the Rams just played, Dave. Do you happen to can you throw me a bone here?
I can, and I'm drawing a blank as well. It wasn't
the Seahawks, was it?
No,
that was week 1.
Yeah, that was week 1, and then in week 2 they played the 49ers.
It was the Cincinnati Bengals on Monday night.
Yeah, it was the Bengals. That's right. It was the Monday night game. They played on Monday night. Yeah, that's why I can't remember, because it was the last game I watched.
Well, Dave, you told me not to get old, man, and here I am losing my memory.
Yeah, no, me too, because I was drawing a blank also. So my fade of the week for this week is Lamar Jackson. As well as he's been playing, I'm just scared of that Browns defense.
Fair, man, fair.
They haven't really played a mobile quarterback yet, so we'll have to see, because Lamar can get fantasy points, with his legs, and he had 100 yards rushing last week.
Yeah.
And like I said, if you have Lamar, you're playing him. I'm just scared of this Cleveland defense. Maybe I'm overreacting to 3 games. But Myles Garrett is like a man possessed. Their secondary is really good. Denzel Ward is playing great. And the Ravens are banged up. Like their offensive line is banged up. Every running back, this happened to them a couple years ago also. Like all their running backs are hurt. Odell is, maybe Odell will be back. He hasn't really done much. It's been kind of Mark Andrews and Zay Flowers and not much else. I would be a little worried starting Lamar this week. So that's mine.
I like it. Well, Dave, it's not fantasy without sleepers. Who's your sleeper for the week?
I'm gonna go with Roschon Johnson. I saw what Miami's running backs did to Denver last week, and I like to think that the Bears will try to get the ball to their running backs in space on screens, and also run right at the Broncos. I think Khalil Herbert also could have a good game, but Roschon's ranked a little lower, so I'll make him my sleeper of the week. How about you?
I like it. Dave, Tyler Lockett should be a popular DFS play this week, going up against the Giants secondary that's given up the second most receiving yards to wide receivers and tied for the second most touchdown receptions this season as the wide receiver 20. I like Lockett a lot this week.
Yeah, he's like perennially underrated. I don't know what it is. Like he's put up almost the same number of fantasy points as DK Metcalf over the last 3 years combined. And most people would look at that and say, well, that's like, 1 and 2, not 1A and 1B, but they're really a 1A and 1B combo. Lockett was always Russ Wilson's like kind of safety blanket and his deep threat guy. So I like that pick. I like that pick a lot. So who's your highest scoring player of the week across all the teams?
Dave, I'm going to give it to Mr. Justin Herbert. He scored 2 touchdowns or more in every game so far this season. He scored 20 points or more in every game this season, and now faces the Raiders secondary that's allowed the most touchdowns to quarterbacks. I like Justin Herbert a lot this week. How about you?
You took my guy, Paul. Herbert for me also. He's basically tied right now with Kirk Cousins as the QB1 through 3 games. Even without Mike Williams, it looks like Eckler's going to miss another game, and he's just going to keep slinging it. He's got plenty of other guys to throw to, 2 tight ends. I tried to pick up Gerald Everett this week because he's another sleeper who I think is going to get more with Mike Williams out. Josh Palmer too. But yeah, Herbert is my guy also. I think he'll be the highest scoring player. Or I think he has the best chance. I don't think he'll be the highest scoring player.
Sure.
There's a lot of players out there, but I think he has the best chance to be.
Absolutely. All right, Dave, who will be the highest scoring non-QB of the week?
I haven't liked what I've seen out of the Bengals offense, but Jamar Chase kind of started coming to life last week. Burrow was really peppering him with throws. And, Tennessee, the way to beat them is to throw the ball. You can't run on them. So I could see a pretty big Jamar Chase game on tap. He's kind of overdue. That whole offense is overdue. And I think he's going to be busy, and I think a big game is on tap for him. How about for you?
So my guy, Devontae Adams, fresh off a 40-point performance in week 3. Next, he'll be going up against the Chargers secondary that's allowed the most receiving touchdowns to wide receivers. I like that matchup, Las Vegas Raiders versus the Chargers. That should be a high-scoring affair, Dave.
Yeah, it always is. Those 2 teams play crazy games all the time.
Yeah, they do.
They played an overtime game, I think, either last year or the year before. They tend to have high-scoring games. You're right. All right, it's time for our favorite segment of the show, the bold call. Paul, what is your bold call for week number 4?
All right, Dave, my bold call week 4 edition. Miami and Buffalo will combine to score 90 or more points.
Wow, 90 is a lot. So that's like a 48-45 game or something like that.
60-30 Miami just for you, Dave.
Yeah. From your mouth to God's ears, as they say. Well,
Yes, sir.
That is a bold call. My bold call, because this happens once a year, is that Taysom Hill will account for 2 touchdowns this week. And
I like that.
In leagues where he's eligible as a tight end, he'll be like the tight end 1 or 2 for the week. I could see
Man.
them with Jameis Winston and kind of not trusting Jameis Winston down around the goal line, and bringing in those Taysom Hill packages where he runs or throws. I know Alvin Kamara's back this week, so maybe they'll just run the ball down at the goal line with Kamara.
Yeah.
But, it's really hard to predict those Taysom Hill games, which is why it's
for real.
hard to roster him in fantasy unless it's best ball because, he could get a 0. But he did have 9 carries last week, or 8 or 9 carries. They used him more last week, and I think he's due for one of those crazy games like he had last year against Seattle. So that's my unlikely bold call of the week.
I like it, man. Get very unique tonight for you, Dave. You've got the kicker, you've got the defensive end, and now you've got Taysom Hill, the Cordell Stewart of our generation, if you will.
Yeah, Cordell Stewart. I'm all over the map tonight for sure.
Yes, sir. Well, Dave, here we are with Plug Talk. Before we get you out of here, let the people know about your content, where we can find it, what we can expect from you this week.
Sure. Thanks, Paul. So on Twitter, I'm at Pigskin Papers. My website is thepigskinpapers.com. Today, I posted my Week 4 preview, which has starts and sits and sleepers, matchups to avoid and exploit, and the like. And then on Monday night, I'll have my Week 5 waiver wire column out. So for now, I'm putting out those 2 columns pretty much every week and doing this podcast with you, usually on Wednesday nights. Tonight we're on a Thursday, but hopefully next week we're back on to our Wednesday 10 Eastern, 9 Central schedule. Paul, where can people find you and your content?
Yes, guys, you can find me on Twitter at Paul_Ryan15. And my content this week, we had my Cowboys podcast was on Monday. We just recapped the Week 3 loss to the Arizona Cardinals. And then tomorrow night, Friday night, we will be doing a preview episode, if you will, of the matchup versus the New England Patriots. This series is called Offsides, and typically we will have a guest to come on and discuss the matchup versus the Cowboys. Unfortunately, I haven't had a lot of luck finding a New England Patriots fan, so it might just be me and my co-host Brendan Smith. But yeah,
they exist.
Tune into that. You can find that on Twitter and YouTube.
They
do. Yes, they do.
They are out there. They might not, showing their faces as much right now as they used to, but that should actually be a good game. I think that Cowboys.
That'll be interesting. Game. It's not going to be a game where we just run over them or anything like that by any means.
No, it could be kind of an ugly game actually. Kind of most Patriots games are. Yeah, they got a good defense. Could be kind of a bit of a back and forth slog.
The last time we faced them, it went into overtime, and it was quite the high-scoring affair.
Yeah. Oh, I remember that. Yeah, I do remember that game. And Dallas ended up winning that game, right?
Yes, sir, and a walk-off TD by CeeDee Lamb.
That's right. All right, Paul. Well, it was a good talk tonight. I'm going to go watch the end of the game, although I see the score is 27-3 Detroit. Might have been the score they beat.
Much to watch, it looks like, Dave.
What?
I said not much to watch, it looks like.
No.
I was just going to say, it doesn't look like there's much of a game to watch.
Yeah, no, it doesn't. And I think that's the score. Isn't that the score that the Lions beat the Falcons last week? It was around that.
I thought it was 20-3. 20-3.
Yeah, so maybe they're coming into their own,
Yeah.
The Lions.
Like
kind of the team that people were expecting them to be this year.
Yeah.
After they stumbled against the Seahawks.
Right.
They win this game, they're 3-1. That's Go ahead.
Yeah, I was going to say they probably should have won that Seahawks game too.
Yeah. Anyway, all right, Paul. Well, let's let each other get out of here. And I will see you next week when we're back on.
Yeah, guys, we appreciate you joining us, and we will see you next week.